Live. It's a good day to be with you. Yesterday was unbelievable, both for those who are online in our service. Your message was fantastic, and those of us who were in our space. Today we're going to talk about the theme of freedom. You have freedom in Christ, freedom to make different decisions, freedom to worship, freedom to make different choices to meet various needs. And so right up front, we want to talk to you about a change for the Gilbert campus. We've noticed a trend that the 11 a.m. and the Life Center is not crazy full. There's a lot of room, and we're speculating. Some people may be saying, well, it's a little too late in the day, I got to get to lunch, whatever. 9 o'clock in the Life Center has been very, very full. Yesterday, we got to keep social distance during this time, and we were right up against it there. So we are making a change back to 10:45. Many of you thought the service started at 11 anyways. No, it started at 10:45 back in the day, and we're going to go back to 10:45. And the invitation for a number of you who may have worshiped out the Gilbert campus at 9, maybe some of you will slide over. There's plenty of room at the formerly 11 o'clock service, now 10:45 service. So you'll be getting a lot of information about that in the coming days. A story is told of a man who went into a Texas bar. Everything's better and bigger.
Bigger, better, and I guess there's beer in the bar. So
in Texas. So a man went in and he ordered 3 bottles of beer from the bartender. Really strange. And he'd take Shinerbach, exactly. He'd take a drink of one, he'd take a drink of another, and then he just went down until the 3 bottles were empty, and then he went back to the bartender. He got 3 more. The bartender was like super curious. He's like saying, don't you know that beer goes flat if you buy 3 at a time? Why don't you just buy 1 at a time? And he goes, well, my brothers and I, we had this kind of tradition. We said when we were apart, anytime we go to a bar, because they like to have a beer together, we're going to drink 3 just to remember, like we're at the table, just to remember this kind of emotional feeling of being together and celebrating life. We got the 3 bottles. So time goes on, and everybody just kind of comes to respect this man for his 3 bottles of beer. It's no longer weird. Well, one day he orders 2 bottles of beer. Uh-oh. And they're like going, oh, something must have happened. So the bartender, goes over with condolences, and he goes, man, I'm so sorry. One of your brothers departed. And he goes, huh? What? He goes, oh, no. That didn't happen at all. He's like, what happened? He goes, well, my wife and I decided to join a Baptist church, so I had to stop drinking. Fortunately, my brothers didn't have to stop drinking. So I thought it was a funny joke. You have freedom. Jesus kept the party going.
That's funny.
You have freedom not to overindulge, but to have a good time. Talk about a good use of Christian freedom. Where do we hear of freedom, Jake, in Scripture? It's kind of all over the place, but one place in particular.
Yeah, I mean, you move into the New Testament, and the Jews had been following the law of God, all 650 or so commandments in the Old Testament, religiously. And one of the biggest ones, through Abraham, was that males early on in their life, at day 8 even, would get circumcised. And so in order to become a Christian, to convert to Christianity, if you were a Gentile, you were already circumcised as a Jew, it was starting to be pressed upon the Gentiles that they would be circumcised. And right here in Galatians chapter 5, Paul speaks of this freedom to not have to be circumcised, not have that be a barrier, not have that be a legalistic law that you have to do. You're free to do it, but you don't have to. He says in Galatians 5:1, for freedom Christ has set us free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit to the yoke of slavery. And then you flash forward a little bit to verse 13. For you were called to freedom, brothers. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour, wow, that's some strong language. Bite and devour one another, watch out that you are not consumed by one another. So there's division even within this church of circumcision and not circumcision.
That's strong
Which
language.
Party? Talk about Democrat, Republican.
Yeah.
What party are you a part of? There's only one way to find out that one.
bite and devour one another. That is so what is he getting after from a theological perspective? What is Paul telling the Christians in Galatia there?
Yeah, I mean, the fallout, the problem is by judging one another, it's based on the law. If you've done this stuff, and leaving no room then for Christian freedom. What are those things that it's okay to be free upon? You know, Christ has set us free, so there's nothing you can do in order to prove yourself to God. So you receive this grace. And then Paul even says in Romans, well, you are free to do whatever, but it'd be good not to do these certain things.
Yeah.
And so you have all this freedom in the world because honestly, whatever you do, you are forgiven.
Yeah.
But by this freedom, he sets you free so that you wouldn't have to have this yoke of slavery. Because in the Old Testament, I mean, they're just weighed down by this law. Do this, do this, do this. You didn't do it. Do this, do this, do this. And on one side, some thought they did it well and they were prideful. Others, like majority of us probably would feel, I'm not doing this well. I'm going to put a smile on or try to figure out, or I'm going to leave this system and have a lot of shame.
So we must focus on freed from and then freed for. So you have been freed from the heavy weight of the law. And Jesus says, my yoke is easy, my burden is light, my teaching, my way, my lifestyle is a light thing. It's a joy-filled thing. I have set you free from sin, death, and the devil, and then freed for. So freed from the heavy weight, and then freed for what? God doesn't need your good works, your neighbor does. Freed from sin, freed for love for neighbor. So with that, let's transition, Jake, and talk a little bit about the two week series and maybe some outcomes. And you listen to sermons like those, and some people are like, woohoo, that's great, and others are like, you could have said more. How are you feeling coming out of this 2 week series?
Yeah, I mean, I just got an email from a dear friend to both of us who wants us to, we just watched it, a sermon from a Catholic priest. I'm sorry, I'm not sure of where, but he kind of got really bold, and he talked about one political party and really said personally, and then he went off for about 15 minutes, why you should vote against this person and that party. And we feel that could be the wrong move, that it'd be overstretching our authority, our leadership. So I felt really good about the last 2 weeks of focusing on the text, this really one huge pivotal New Testament interaction that we have, where a governmental leader is faced with Jesus and a citizen of both earth and heaven. And Jesus seemed to be claiming, of course, that he has the authority, that God put it to Pilate, so he gives Pilate the authority, but he's going to go die for the sins of the world. Like, what's most important? We heard it here. It's love. It's courage to do that right thing. And so I was glad that we didn't overstretch our authority and we would have the freedom to do, I guess, but to speak against political parties, because as we just talked about, there's wrong in both parties because they're both sinful. And so I feel like it was a safe place for independents, Democrats, Republicans,
which we have all of them in our
to be loved and cared for and hear the word of God. And really multiple truths, like the paragraph we had yesterday about what would you tell the president right after he got elected. I mean, that was chock full of good biblical information that had tension in it. I maybe agree with you or I don't agree with you, let's say that, but I'm going to pray for you. That's just the disagreement and the tension that we live in. So
if your fervor gets to a certain level around the political issues of the day, this is where I got the most kind of passionate. This is approaching idolatry, and you're putting something in the place of God, a fervor of worship. There's a good opinion piece this morning in USA Today about it, and we're seeing it in spades. And if you start to go down this kind of nationalistic, party-centered pathway, here's where you're going to end up. Legalism, Pharisaism. It's down that hyper. So you are a citizen first and foremost of the kingdom of heaven, and Jesus is reigning. And therefore, if you lose love with all of these strong values around different policies, if you lose love in talking to your neighbor who may not share those same values, you have lost an opportunity to share the gospel. And ultimately, we're going to be held responsible for our witness. And if we lose love, I'm reading a book right now called Leadership. It was, and I can't, it's a really long last name. I'll get it to you. And it's a really thick book. It was written in the 1970s, and it talks to politicians about how it's ranked the #1 leadership book actually in the 20th century. I got McGregor. There we go. McGregor is the author's last name. It's not a complex name, but he talks about if you lose baseline needs, kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, love and trust and care, physical needs. If you lose that, you can't even talk about politician. And right now, unfortunately, given the polarization and the heat coming on both sides, it's just, you can't even get to, I want to have a real conversation about pro-grace, right? I think abortion is a big topic of our day. The Bible speaks about the value of all lives. In the womb, in sin did my mother conceive me, right? So the Bible, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. You knew my days before any one of them came to be. So we got to talk about that, but the level of hostility needs to come down. Civility and love and charity need to reign. We need to talk about immigration and immigration reform. We need to talk about police brutality and police reform. We need to talk about these things, but unfortunately, given the polarization, you lose love. And then human beings want to always put ourselves in different tribal camps. And could it be that neither of these two camps are going to fulfill what only the Jesus camp can fulfill, because love is often lost in both of those different camps parties.
Yeah. I was reflecting a little bit. I guess I'll just start talking about it of, being a Christian first and then being American, and then you perhaps have a party. But I remember growing up in Texas, like there is such a passion for, I'm from Texas, man. And I am from Texas and I love Texas. But I remember the unhealthiness of like, wow, you're saying that you're better than anyone else. And some of you haven't even left the state, And I just have a wide traveling experience, been to 15 countries, 42 states. And you're like, we're pretty awesome, but doesn't mean we're the greatest. Yeah. And so what I'm saying there too is that when I really started to think about my political life, it's like, I have to check a box, on the forms, but I don't even like being rooted to just a party, you know? Just as a citizen, it's like, here are the candidates, hear what they're talking about, go back to the word. And it really keeps me grounded to not be like, I'm Republican, I'm Democrat, I'm independent. Just to say, you know what? I'm going to go back to being a follower of Jesus, living in America, who also happens to need to vote.
Is there any perfect...
I don't want to be so aligned to one thing.
Well, it's because we live in a democratic nation.
Yeah.
With multiple parties. We don't have kings. It's not a monarchy.
Yeah.
This isn't England, right? It's a complex system where every 4 years we vote for respective candidates, and it's a cycle of sinful men and women serving in these leadership positions, which God He's placed in there.
I think that was a big aha for me yesterday, even just personally as I was speaking, is that, friends, let's say your candidate doesn't win, and this other candidate does. God was in charge.
Right.
Like, wow. I mean, in the Old Testament, he uses these pagan kings to be elected to do certain things. And so it gives me a lot of comfort, though, on the other side. Wow. Whatever's going to happen, God's in control. And he wants to do that, position certain people to do certain things.
And we do know this, that the days are short.
Yeah.
And it gets worse before it gets better. The darkness comes, and it gets really dark if you read the book of Revelation and just our end-time theology. It gets really dark before the light of Jesus appears on that day. So either way, Jesus is still Lord. Let's pivot the last 5 minutes or so and talk about the ULC, the commissioning yesterday. Here are my two observations. Was it a big celebration at East Mesa? I hope so.
It was great. It was wonderful.
Yeah. On the one hand, though, I thought people in our congregation, our culture, they're kind of looking around like, what's the big deal? this is just the Christ Greenfield way. We discover, develop, and deploy future leaders into ministry. So
I think that
felt good, actually.
The only big deal, or the big deal I sensed was not that, oh, whoa, what's happening because you're going with other seminaries that we're also working with, Sioux Falls, and also MTC locally, Missional Training Center, but that there was 2 guys up in each, or 3, so that was a move. Usually
5,
it's
right?
like 5 total.
Yeah.
Usually it's, a vicar or a DCE or whatnot, but to see 5 between 2 campuses, that was I think people were like, well,
cool.
We know we've seen them over the years, but today we're hearing about 5 and 2 campuses. And even at East Mesa, we had Jessica Vianney stand. She's you can pray for her. Jessica Vianney, she's been a member here for about 15 years or so, and a leader, and she's applying for the deaconess program out of Concordia, St. Louis.
Should be starting in January?
Starting in
maybe May or
probably
August.
May or August.
Yeah.
But she's got actually January.
Okay.
She's got 3 major tests to complete. She's completed 1, and she's got the New Testament and doctrine coming up.
Done, Jess.
Good job, Jess. You're studying hard. Keep it up.
Yeah, for sure. So the thing is, on the one hand, it's not very surprising. On the other, I hope that you see, and you've heard us talk about it for a long time, that there's a shortage of leaders within our church body. Love the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. We got our warts like every church body, but I don't think we're recognizing the big epidemic, the big loss of leaders. If you missed the Facebook thing I did the other day about the Kairos Project and our need for leaders, 94.2% of my 330 respondents had been in ministry for 30 years
94%.
or more. 94%, dude. And 2% had been in ministry 10 years or less. So we've got a major crisis, not just of pastors, but of other leaders. And the invitation, the opportunity right now, especially in the midst of COVID, is to recognize it's not just about vocational pastors or leaders. It's about a variety of people saying, I want to grow to be, and I got a teaching gift. I want to grow as a teacher, but I'm going to use that in a variety of vocations. I'm going to be a bivocational pastor or leader, but then I'm also keeping my day job in real estate or whatever it may be.
Yeah, we saw yesterday with the 5 of those guys.
Exactly. So bivocational leaders are going to be huge, but people development training is a big, big deal. So thank you for your support of the ULC and the Kairos Project partnership. If you want more information, uniteleadership.org. The last thing, Accelerators kicking off today. We'd covet some prayers for our 4 congregations getting together. What are you excited about with the Accelerator?
Yeah, we have a cohort coming together, and we're going to talk about the big why. So what's your big why? And last night, Nicola and I were scrolling through Facebook. She saw this article about Chick-fil-A. And it was interesting when you look at mission. The mission of Chick-fil-A is like to glorify God. And it's like, there's nothing about a chicken sandwich and all of this. And just that concept of their big why at all, the number 1 grossing fast food chain in America, who's also closed on Sundays, has glorified God and nothing about a chicken sandwich in their mission statement. So we're going to be talking about that, the big why. What's your big why? And I just love when the congregations get it and they're like, this is our big why for Jesus and what we're going to do to expand his kingdom.
Yeah, exactly. So what would you tell folks is our big why right now? How would you define that?
Our big why.
We exist to do what?
We exist to do what? Discover, develop, and deploy people. What do? We're people developers. So are you.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
1 person at a time is all you need to do. Maybe it's 5, 10, fine, 100 or something, but just start with 1. Yeah. And over time, that's going to get God's kingdom
ripple effect, man,
to grow like crazy into not even Gilbert or just this East Valley, but who knows where God's going to start local communities of church and homes, in annex buildings, and coffee shops and bars.
Exactly.
Maybe in a bar in Texas, or Singapore, or China, or Flagstaff. Can't wait.
The world is huge, and I think COVID's given us the opportunity to see it's actually real small, and we could have a reach. The multiplying discipleship movement here could have a reach far beyond just the East Valley. So thanks so much for hanging out with us today on Tim and Jake Live. Jesus is good. May the joy and peace that only comes from him saturate your heart in the midst of the chaos and crazy, divided, polarized nature in which we find ourselves today. Keep your eyes firmly fixed upon Jesus, the author and perfecter of your faith. We're thankful for you.
Have a good one.
Peace of the Lord, Christ Greenfield. Later.
See you at church.